So dudes, welcome to my attacker tier list for Operation Dread Factor. I plan on getting in a habit of releasing these pretty much every major patch. I think it'd be a great way to lead into the season, and they seem to be popular, and you guys seem to like what I have to say. So, easy money, right? We'll just keep pumping these out. Keep the algorithm, the whole shebang going. This video is sponsored once again by my friends at Keeps. Keeps is a service that helps guys deal with male pattern baldness, something of which will happen to 2 out of 3 guys by the time they reach the age of 35. Keeps takes all the guesswork out for you and allows you to handle the process entirely from your computer desk, so that way you don't have to cut time into your busy schedule in order to deal with this. Keeps has a round-the-clock system of people that you can touch base with that know what they're talking about and will come up with a special plan specifically for what you need, which means that if you're not necessarily dealing with baldness per se, but you have a little bit of thinness, maybe it's not as healthy as it should be, Keeps also has a line of really high quality shampoos and conditioners that you can try. It's important to act sooner rather than later, and hair loss stops with Keeps. To get a special offer, go to keeps.com/Gregor. That's KEEPS.com/Gregor for a special offer. And thanks again to Keeps for sponsoring this video. They've been a friend of the channel for a long time, and I can't thank them enough. Brava. Okay, most recently added attacker. I've been playing Brava quite a bit. I like Brava a lot. I don't know if anybody... I haven't really featured her too much in a lot of clips, but in the private Discord server that we've been using to record a lot of like competitive gameplay, you might notice at the top of the screen sometimes the rounds are like 6 and 7 and stuff like that, and it's like, what's going on? Those are private, like competitive, like pickup games that we do with competitive rules amongst me and some of my friends. And, I've been getting target banned on Brava, which I take as a compliment now. I guess I'm okay with that. Just because her ability to just completely blow up any defense's gadgetry-based sort of setup is really, really strong. And even if they don't have a lot of gadgetry like Maestro cameras or Melusi wubs and stuff like that, her ability to leverage default cameras and help your team that way is super, super strong if the defense isn't paying attention and trying to actively shut down the drone. Now, it's one of those things, if the team is paying attention or the map geometry doesn't really favor it, it is a little bit more difficult to get value out of the gadget. But at the end of the day, regardless of whether you hack a bunch of stuff or not, even if you hack a couple of cameras, Brava still has 4 drones total, right? She has 2 of the main drones in addition to the 2 that she gets as a part of her gadget. She can steal more intel if she gets the opportunity to do so. She has a shotgun. She has very powerful weapons. The cameras is a very good DMR. She just has so many ups for her, and she's 3-speed, right? So she just has so many thumbs ups that it's really difficult to put her anywhere, anywhere lower than this. I'm not going to put her in S tier just because I'm not going to bring her for every single site in the game. And there are going to be some situations where I think it's better to have a little bit more direct destructive utility. What she doesn't have in terms of, destruction, she makes up for it with her gadget and being able to sometimes destroy things, but it's not as easy as, say, Twitch. Twitch can't deal with bandit batteries as easily, and Brava doesn't have explosives. So that is, if she had any weaknesses, that's really her only one. Up next, you guys are going to find this one a little bit fun. Grim. Grim got a really, really good buff recently. I've been uploading a lot of shorts detailing how good the buff has been. So basically, what's really helped him a lot is, 2 things, really. The gadget deploys 1,000,000 times faster than it used to. Pretty much detonates almost instantly. And the radius at which the gadget is effective is quite large. So in one example that I got during my stream the other day, I can actually cut off the entirety of the blue-white box with just 2 B canisters. I can cut off half of that and force that player to peek me on one side. So that way I don't have to guess when I'm taking the gunfight. Is it going to peek me on the right? Is it going to peek me on the left? And if I don't take that gunfight in the hatch, in some ways, if I know that my gun rack or something is safe, I could just really take that aggressive fight and maybe just drop the hatch even, because that person has nowhere to go. So Grim is a lot better at flushing out people from power positions than he used to be. And I think that was kind of the whole point of the gadget, was dual parts crowd control in an aggressive sort of posture, and also for site executes and post plants. He's a very versatile crowd controlling character. And the thing that makes the bees so powerful is that they act so quickly, and you'd be shocked when Grim is used correctly, the amount of space that he can cover in that amount of time is really, really powerful. It's really something. It's a huge pain in the butt to deal with, and basically kind of forces you to stay still, unless you want to get, hard pinged by the bees. The bees pretty much give whoever is looking at them wall hacks. Also, he has a bailiff, and he can make really, really fun vertical plays with that too. So he can go from below and hit a power position because the bee canister will fall from the ceiling, or he can go above. And his gun's really good with a 1.5. He has the IQ's AR, the Commando, with an extended barrel. It's really powerful, and he's a 3-speed as well. Plus, he has can openers now. All right, next up is Sens. As you can tell, I'm doing this in reverse release order. So Sens is really weird. Something that I try to say a lot with these tier lists is that it's better to think of them more as a competitive viability chart rather than as a, good, bad, right? Some of the operators down here are bad, but I've always said this. I think there's no such thing as a bad operator in Rainbow Six Siege, with a couple exceptions. Sens is in a really weird spot because they can bring a lot of value depending on the circumstances. If the map geometry suits it, if your team strategy suits it as well. And if you have a Glaz to back it up, for instance, something that I did see not too long ago, I forget, it might have been a major or either invite, I forget which. But W7M brought Sens and Glaz for a smoke plant it was a church take on Clubhouse. And they sensed off blue, and they sensed off, I think, like a part of like the armory wall to the armory rotate to the left. And so Glaz was able to cover the plant just by one Sens that was able to just like you throw it and then boom. And if you know what you're doing, if you're coordinated, if you have a plan, Sens can give you value. Sens has the 417 DMR, which is the best DMR in the game. Sens has can openers. Sens has a Gon 6. However, so many things have to go right, and so many things have to go off of each other's comms and cues in terms of your teammates. Very difficult to play. Sens has a very high learning curve, and there are a lot of situations where Sens is not that useful. So it's kind of tough to justify Sens being anything more than just kind of a niche pick. It's not to say that Sens is bad. I don't think Sens is bad. I'm just saying Sens is not useful most of the time for all those reasons. Next up is Osa. So Osa's our first B tier character, and Osa kind of fell off a little bit. Osa, despite not a lot of things changing since her introduction in terms of her character design, she did get EMPs. She did get a 3 armor nerf. I would argue it's a buff based off of her role and the way that she plays personally. But the thing is, the meta just doesn't really favor the attackers just kind of sitting and waiting. And that's what Osa does really well, right? Osa is very good at holding crosses. Good examples of map geometry where Osa shines are Bank top floor and Villa top floor. You can bring Osa with the shield and just kind of like sit and wait for things to kind of, your attackers are going to try to leverage Capitao bolt, nade people off of their power positions. You sit on the Osa shield, and then you kind of, like jiggle peek back and forth, and then get picks off of people that are trying to like rotate and try to get better vantage points on your friendlies, while your friendlies plant, of course. That also helps as well. Osa is really, really good at covering the plant. But the thing is, it requires her to be very stationary. It requires her to obviously have a team that knows what the hell's going on, and she kind of has to be a part of a strat. She has to be a part of an environment where that ability can be leveraged with a bulletproof glass. She can be a makeshift Monty, which is kind of neat too. But right now, what we're seeing is, attackers are just full sending a lot of the time, and Osa can't really like be a part of that. A part of that kind of like spearhead echelon in the way that other characters can, because her kit just isn't really suited around that. She has no destruction whatsoever. The only thing that she has are the secondary EMPs. So while she can help open the wall, that's great. There are going to be a lot of situations where, we're not going to try to open the wall. So for very linear, very congested site takes, Osa's a pretty solid pick. And then for everything else, it's kind of like, do we really need an Osa? We can bring somebody else. So she's good, but she's not great 100% of the time. And that's why she's at B tier. Okay, another character that's kind of in a weird spot is Flores. So Flores, he's used oftentimes as a makeshift Thatcher, just because his gadget is, it's just a big thing that explodes. It's an RC car. If you have a ton of utility that you really, really need to get rid of, you bring a Flores. If you have very congested sort of site holds, Oregon bunker is a great example of this. If you have a very congested site hold where you're going to definitely have a deployable shield, you're definitely going to have like, you know, Shaiko player here, guy in elbow here, guy on the box here, guy on pillar, right? You don't really have a lot of options to get people off of these power positions without verticality. And if the map doesn't have vertical, and if they're bringing nades, then Flores is probably going to be your first option. Flores, you know, it shines in that environment. And then for a bunch of other ones, it's sort of like, okay. Because the issue is that in order for Flores to open the wall, per se, right, with the Flores drone, the defense has to be, you know, really just not paying attention or not bring a mute. So there are a lot of counters to Flores in terms of just being like attentive and hitting your shots and just bringing a mute. So Flores is good, but he's also really easy to shut down given certain circumstances. And, you know, he has flashbangs and he has a solid gun, but if you can't get anything going with that RC car, it's really tough to justify him on your roster. So it's kind of similar to the Osa situation where it's like, okay, he's really good. We need this for this specific situation. And then, you know, for a lot of other ones, it's sort of like, okay, you know, what are we doing here? Like, what is Flores doing? Right? What does he bring? He has a car that blows up. All right, great. Are we able to leverage that? That's a different story. This one's going to be unpopular. Sam, 0. Look, I want to like Sam. I want to like him a lot. I love the SC3000K. I would use that AR in pretty much every character if I could. It doesn't have a lot of recoil. It melts with body shots. It has a 1.5. It's precise. It's easy to use. It does a lot of damage. It's a very good weapon. Great ranked op, Sam. But it's kind of the Cav situation where it's like, what am I doing with this guy? Okay. I have 4 drones with Brava. I can bring a Nomad if I really need a flank watch. I can bring a Twitch for 4 drones as well. Right? It's kind of like, okay, what's the point? Right? We can just, you know, for maps where it makes, you know, sense, you can have that kind of like really, really big coverage. Sure. Bank, he's good on Bank. He's good on Chalet. Right? Lots of wide open space. You can put a SAM cam up in the corner of the room, and then you can see pretty much all of the crosses, you know, from like one half of the building. That's strong, right? That's good. Then there's a bunch of maps where it's like, what are we doing? Why are we bringing this guy? Yes, I know that he can do the thing with the camera where he can turn it and he can like zap stuff. That's a little bit more specific, and sometimes that only really works. You know, it's a lot of things have to go right for Sam to get value, and that's the tough part. And when you have other options that can do the same job a little bit more efficiently, in the nature of a character-based game like Siege, you're just not going to see a lot of play from this guy. And that's why you pretty much never see Sam in competitive, because so many other options can just do the same thing. All right, we got our first hard breacher on the board, Ace. Ace is the premier hard breacher at the moment. He can throw stuff over a distance, doesn't get C4'd right when you're Thermite. He can throw stuff across the wall, so that way Bandit can't deal with it at the same time. It's faster than Hibana. He can blow up the most amount of stuff in the most efficient way possible, in the safest way possible, all at the same time. The only time where Ace is like, okay, we don't really need this guy, is where you need like a lot of hatch destruction. That's where Hibana, you know, really, really shines, especially for Clubhouse attacking on for a basement take when all the hatches are going to be open for that. Bank basement, also a great example of that. Pretty much for any kind of main wall, though, that, you know, that isn't outside, right? You can afford to bring a Thermite because you don't have to worry about the C4. Thermite blows up more stuff. But for pretty much every freaking main wall in the game right now, Ace is your guy. AK-12, Claymore, this one's pretty straightforward. There's not much to talk about here. He's just the main hard breach, and he's going to get picked a lot of the time because, you know, you need it. So, yeah. Main entry frag in the game right now is Iana. Iana has so many things that she offers for her team, and she is the most cost-effective entry fragger in the game right now. All the other options, you know, have roles that are a little bit more specific, or they got nerfed into 3 armors. So, you know, Iana has really good guns, right? She has the ARX or the G36. She can nade from below. She has infinite droning over the course of an entire game, right? She just, like, there's no real downside to having Iana on your team. But it's also one of those situations where it's like she's too valuable to have on your side where you don't really want to ban her. So, you know, her pick rate, it's one of those like weird situations where it's like, okay, like we don't leverage anything by not having this. If we don't have like that entry frag, then we're going to be at a disadvantage when it comes back on the Switch, and it's not worth the, you know, the ban. So you just have a character who has like an 80% freaking pick rate and then like no ban rate. And it's like, okay, well, if she's so good, then why don't you ban her? Well, it's like, I can't, because then I need Iana on attack. So it's one of those, kind of those weird situations. Yeah, she pretty much just like outclasses all the other entry fraggers. She brings the most to the table without as many downsides. She has frag grenades, good gun. Go burr. There you go. Another character that I hate to put low. I like Callie, okay? I like Callie a lot. In fact, I'll show you how much I like Callie. Okay, Callie and I go way back. I remember playing Callie quite a bit for Go4s and stuff when I was trying to do competitive stuff with the game back in 2020. She shined quite a bit during the utility meta. And even then it was still tough to put her, much higher than B maybe. That was being generous. Callie is a fun sleeper pick to play on maps where the geometry is favorable to you, where you have a really, really long freaking cross that you can hold from super far away, and you just sit and you op, right? You op CSGO, somebody peeks, you punish them for peeking, you punish them for rotating, you catch them on the rotate, it's like, okay, you can't move anywhere because I'm going to shoot you and take you down in one shot. She has a lot of utility destruction with the lance. That is very useful. But the issue, right, is that she's, very limited to the map because of the gun. And there are other options besides Callie who can do her job. Secondary EMPs can do her job. Nades from below can do her job. Zof from below, Buck, right? Stuff like that. And you don't really have to worry about opening the wall as much as you used to, right? Let's face it, you can probably a lot of the time, you can leverage a situation where you don't need to do a whole ton of destruction. So for really, really like utility dependent maps like Villa, I love bringing Callie. I love bringing her so that I can watch the master peak from far away. That usually shuts that down, like pretty much just like that. Any kind of like ranked ratting, Callie's really good at shutting down. For super competitive stuff though, it's a little bit tougher to justify her. And it's not to say that she's useless, but I would say know what you're doing before you try to utilize her. Amaru, the timing character, misses timing. So Amaru, here's what you do with Amaru. Okay, you go to a piece of low elevation where the enemy is not going to expect somebody to suddenly be at that elevation higher, and then you wait. Then your attacking teammates go somewhere, they hit sight. You Amaru in, and then you hit a pinch. You basically just do a timing, right? You do an elevation timing. Cafe, great example of this that I always cite, right, for Amaru. You have your teammates across from you, right, around Cigar and New Balk. They're hitting sight. Amaru goes up to heaven, cuts off Cocktail Balk. Pretty straightforward, right? The guys who are playing Cocktail are preoccupied with the push in front of them. Then they get hit from the side, and now they have two angles to watch at the same time. Pretty much it. She can also go up to like Oregon Tower really quickly and then clear it top down. That's kind of useful. She's just right. She has mobility, and that's not useless in Siege, right? Because map control is useful, but I would say that it requires a lot of game knowledge. It requires a lot of map knowledge to know, where to go and when to use the hook. So yeah, her guns are good, but I would say that having a plan is kind of necessary to get a lot of usefulness out of her. Nokk kind of fell off, but she still gets banned quite a bit. The FMG9 got nerfed, but she still has nades. Her gadget is still just as good as it was, right? Even when you take into consideration the FMG9 recoil nerf. Nokk is very good at what she does. She waits for an opening, she activates her cloak, she slips past the camera without shooting it, and then the defense doesn't really have any recourse, right? They don't really have like a way to react to it because they literally can't quite pick her up unless, she makes her presence known. So she's really good at hitting, just that one like really, really sneaky flank while the attack is doing something, right? Kind of like Amaru, except, in this instance, it's a little bit more useful, right? Because she can do it wherever, right? She's not dependent on having to go up a hatch or having to go up into a window, right? Good examples for Nokk timing flanks, I would say Bank Garage. There's usually going to be a Maestro camera there. Nokk goes up to the the little piece of cover there by the car, activates it, goes up to another car, waits for it to cool off or come back on, goes past a Maestro camera, bada bing, bada boom, right? And then hits the flank. There's not really any way to effectively shut that down. So you know, Nokk doesn't have a like particularly strong counter. And because she brings a lot of upside without a sufficient counter, she's a pretty solid A tier pick. But she does, you know, suffer a little bit from that FMG9 nerf if you're not used to the recoil. Gritty, hit the grid. Okay, so Gridlock. Gridlock is a pretty severely underrated character in my opinion. Gridlock is good for site executes, not so much for like taking control or you know obtaining stuff, right? Obtaining map control. But once you do have the map control, she is very good at holding it, right? She has a very low recoil, easy to use weapon, which is nice. She is a 3 armor, which she kind of benefits from in a defensive posture to a certain degree, right? If you have the position to hold, if you have the pixel to kind of go back and forth off of. Again, when you're trying to get into position, it's a little bit more difficult because, you know, she's a 3 armor and she's loud as fuck. But that's, you know, the trade-off. Once you get sight control, you can throw a bunch of track stingers all over the place. You can throw smokes. You have a gun that you can use to blow stuff up if you have to. Or you can bring a shotgun, right, which is also quite useful if you want to go vertical with the track stingers. She's a very versatile support character who can do lots of different things, who can help your team pretty much like her whole job centers around like the actual like sight hit and getting the bomb down and making sure that it stays undiffused, right? That's pretty much it. But, you know, because she is, you know, very limited to that role, you know, she's a very defensive, passive kind of character. It's a little bit harder to justify her, you know, going much higher than this because there are lots of situations where you do need to take map control, right? Especially in this very TDM-centric meta. You need to be able to, you know, push the aggressive defenders away. That's kind of the trade-off. Okay, so Nomad, kind of the same vein as Gridlock. Nomad is really good at what she does and then not a whole lot else, right? She has, you know, a little bit of utility, right? She has stuns, she has breaches, she has the air jabs, but she doesn't have destruction. And, you know, she has util burn, which was useful, you know, a long time ago, right? When Jaeger and Wamai were pretty much like every single freaking, you know, you had to, you know, burn. Everything was like a math equation, utility simulator of how much you had to burn Jaeger ADSs. Now it's like, okay, you know, like having the flashes is cool. The air jabs are cool, but you know, there are a lot of situations where it's like you need something a little bit more aggressive to like do a, you know, to make a really aggressive roam clear happen. And then your, you know, your flex picks are usually going to be like on characters like Lion, on Dokkaebi, on Capitao, right? They're not going to play Nomad quite as much. Nomad's good, don't get me wrong, but she's not the S tier character that she used to be. So, you know, having the air jabs set up for the appropriate, you know, kind of map that you're on where you are, you know, just because the nature of the geometry kind of lends itself to like, okay, there's a bunch of corridors here and we need to like, we can't allocate a body to this corridor. I'm going to put an air jab on it, right? That's useful. But there are a lot of situations where you can just get away with leaving a drone there. So it's like, you know, trade-offs. Nomad has solid weapons and she does her job really well. It's just not something that you want to bring 100% of the time. Okay, this is going to be a controversial one, Maverick. I know this one's going to irritate the shit out of some people, so I'm going to show you the stats to back it up. Here are the Copenhagen pick charts for operators. Do you guys see Maverick? No, and the reason for that is because Maverick is pretty much brought for situations where you have sites that you want to, or you have site hatches that you want to open, or just hatches in general, I should say, that you want to open, and there is a Cade on the board, and you don't want to justify the secondary EMPs to those hatches, right? Maverick is good for that, right? If you have hatches that are electrified and you don't want to you don't want to do like the resource shuffle, right? You know, okay, I need EMPs, Hibana come over here. You can have Maverick come over and then take care of that. But the days of Maverick tricking a wall to open it are not really a thing anymore, especially ever since secondary EMPs got added. That's all like, that's kind of out the window. And he lost his frag grenades, so he can't really do, you know, like put the Maverick hole and then throw the frag grenade in and then boom, and then, you know, open the wall that way. Like all of the, you know, he had a great run, right? He had a great run back in the day. He was like one of the best characters, most useful characters in the game. He was a Swiss Army man, but now it's just kind of like, you know, guy's falling on hard times, right? He's just not really in the meta anymore because other people can do his job in a much more efficient way. And so, you know, that's technology, that's life, it's a lot of things. And, you know, he has a good gun. M4 is pretty good. So if you want to play him in ranked, I'm not going to stop you. And speaking of which, here's Lion. So Lion is used quite a bit in the current, TDM meta, right? Because he's really good at helping with that aggressive roam clear that you need. You have a flanker, you have a roamer that you know is there. If your teammates are in position to be able to kind of like pinch and collapse on that person, well, you bring the lion for that, and then you hit the lion call, and then you make it, more difficult for that defender to, maneuver around and take the engagements that they want. So lion is, a very versatile character in that regard. Not to mention, his weapons are very good. Excuse me, the V308 is a very good primary. The 417 is the best DMR in the game. Even if you want to run the freaking shotgun, I mean, like the shotgun's the best. Like he has like some of the best weapons for each class on his person. So that's pretty significant in and of itself. And he has a Gon 6, and he has secondary EMPs to open the wall if there is a wall to open. So he fills in a lot of gaps, and he doesn't really have any particularly strong downsides. In fact, he kind of does it all. He has very good utility, and he has really good weapons. So, like you're not going to, like, he's not a must bring for every single freaking site. So he's not like up here, but he's very good. Well, we're back here again, aren't we? Okay. Finka, obviously losing the nades was really tough. Obviously the LMG getting nerfed was tough. The spear also got nerfed for some reason. That one was a little bit odd. I'm not really sure why they did that in terms of the recoil, not for the nerf for the spear, because like on Thunderbird it wasn't really broken, and on Finka it wasn't really broken. Finka doesn't really like do anything that you want, right? In terms of like other entry fraggers that can kind of do the same thing, right? Like not having that little bit of like utility helpfulness really hurts her a lot. So it's like, okay, it's not necessarily that she is like a bad character, but it's more kind of like, okay, what does Finka bring that we need? Evidently not very much compared to other entry fraggers. There are some situations where I think she can work in a very like, super set up, very deliberate and planned, like aggressive, like rush strat, like with the Blitz. That is one example where you can bring a Finka. Finka also provides somewhat of a counter to Fenrir when her gadget is up. The effect of Fenrir's mines are reduced slightly. And then you have those two examples, and then everything else is like, okay, wow, that's great. That's, who cares, right? Like, why would you bring Finka over Iana? There's no reason, right? So, Dokkaebi. Dokkaebi is very useful for an aggressive roam clear, like we were talking about earlier. She can either bring secondary EMPs or smokes or stuns. She has a Gon 6. She has a solid primary. And when you hack cameras, right, you have instant guaranteed intel value across the entire map. Yeah, she has it all. She really doesn't have a single thing about her that's like, this character is not good in this facet, right? Like she's like 9 out of 10 on a bunch of other things. And then the only thing she's really kind of lacking in, I would say, is maybe like killing power, because the DMR, it's not a bad gun, but it's not an R4C. So, like, if you guys can come up with an argument, feel free to let me know. I don't have any. Arguments for why Dokkaebi isn't an S tier character, because I can't think of anything that she does that's like bad, right? Every single aspect of her character is quite good. So it's like, hello, right? She can help with the roam clear with the phone call. It's not countered by Vigil, right? Or Solus can't see it coming, for one. The only way that you can kind of get around the phone call is if you have mute jammers. So unless mute decides to allocate util to that, it's kind of like whatever. Yeah, very good character. Swiss Army woman. She can do everything. Any kind of hole that you need plugged in your strat, Dokkaebi can probably do it for you. So, I could keep it short, and I think I will. Zof is not a bad entry fragger, but it's one of those situations where it's sort of like, okay, like Iana has nades. We're going to talk about Sledge later eventually too. Sledge has nades. Right, like she's a 3 armor, which really kind of hurts her for playing aggressively because you can hear her from a million miles away. One thing that Zof is good for, right, is util denial from below. She can go below with the grenade launcher, hit the wall stuff, whatever it is, probably bandit boxes, mute jammers, and then go back to frying people with the M762. solid gun, right? But she got hit really bad with the nerfs that she got over the course of the last couple of years or so. So it's kind of like, okay, like every, Zoph's like a quintessential entry frag, right? She has a good guns and she has a gadget that can sometimes, blow up a piece of utility if you need to. And then you look over here and like, here's Iana, right? So, like she's more useful most of the time than a lot of the options over here. So she kind of falls into this by default, I guess, if that makes sense. She doesn't really, go much higher than that. Ying. Ying's super good. But here's the thing, right? You probably don't really get to see her that much, especially in competitive. You want to know why? Because if you go over here, wow. She gets banned 54% of the time. And then when she doesn't get banned, Warden comes along and then shuts down the Ying. Right? His presence there kind of passively shuts that down. So she's really weird, right? Like you're sort of caught as a Rainbow Six Siege team, especially in a competitive environment. If you don't ban her, then she's going to show up again and again and again and again and again because there's no reason to not bring her, right? She throws a million flashbangs all at once, and then it just makes it like she can just you can basically get your attacking team. It's like, oh hey, there's a piece of map control there. I'm just gonna throw a bunch of crap, just fucking right. Like there's no point in not doing it, right? Because whoever's playing on the power position is just fucked, right? They're just sitting there. They're like, okay, cool, I'm gonna hold it. Oh wait, no, I can't. And there's no way for me to counteract it. It doesn't matter if I look away because it's a Ying Candela. So it's like if you don't bring her, then you're kind of trolling, right? And it's a frustrating kind of situation, balance wise. I think that Ying is somewhat overdue for at least kind of like a, reeling in some of the changes that she got that made her so, powerful. At least take away one of the Candelas, I think wouldn't hurt her. But in her current state, it's like a character with a super kajillion million flashbangs, and she doesn't blind herself when she's using them. You're basically just saying like, okay, free map control. This is mine now. And unless you get really organized and have like a plan to deal with it, it's tough to shut it down. Jackal. Go ahead. Get out of your system. Are you done? All right, cool. Let's look at the chart. Okay. Where is he? Nowhere, right? Because everybody here can do the same thing. Jackal is in a really, he's a weird character, right? Like in ranked, if this was a ranked tier list, I'd probably, I'd definitely put him, like A, B tier. And again, these tiers are not bad, right? Because sometimes Maverick is useful, right? Sometimes Callie is useful. Sometimes Sens is useful. Sometimes Jackal's useful. But he's not useful most of the time. And the reason that he's not is because everybody else can do the same thing in a more efficient way. Dokkaebi pretty much clears Jackal in terms of the roam hunting argument right now. Not to mention with Solus on the board, right? Every time he uses this thing, he is hard countered by Solus. Solus gets on the scanner, doesn't matter, right? Jackal reveals his position just by existing. So now you got to ban the Solus. And then why would you, bring the Jackal? Why would you go out of your way, to shut down the Solus for yourself when you can just bring a Dokkaebi or a Lion, get the same effect anyway? So it's tricky. It's useful, the Jackal pings when they are useful, if he can put himself in a position where he can, scan for the footsteps. But he also leaves himself, somewhat vulnerable for it. And it's one of those things where it's like, he's good at what he does, but you have, a ton of other things in a much more coordinated team environment. That's kind of the main thing, right? Like Jackal's like a very self-sufficient character. He's a very kind of selfish character. And in a competitive environment, you need to rely on your teammates a lot more. And so when you have that thrown into the equation, there's just, like selfish characters don't do well in games like this, and it's just kind of one of those things. I'm not going to stop you from playing Jackal. His gun is very good. His gadget is very good when it goes off, right? But then, he has the pings and that's it, right? And then he has a shotgun, but he doesn't have destruction. And, you're pretty much on your own. Hibana, Hatch Destruction Queen. Okay, so Hibana, you're attacking bank basement, you're attacking clubhouse basement. She can destroy the most amount of hatches. She can destroy 4 hatches, and then she has spare change. Am I dumb? 4 hatches. I know that she can get 4. I don't know if she has spare change. I think that's all of her pellets. Regardless, that's the important part, is that she can destroy every hatch by herself, right? 4 pellets. That's pretty freaking powerful. So, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, Ace can't do that. Thermite can't do that. You know, there are some situations where obviously most of the time Ace is going to be a lot better because Hibana is slower, right? Hibana is a good supplementary hard breach pick in some instances as well. But you also have can openers that can kind of do the same thing, right? We have a lot of characters that can kind of fill in that gap. So, you know, her role has been diminished somewhat slightly. But the hatch thing and the occasional, like, okay, here's like a line of sight opening wall. I kind of need that, especially on bank, right? You're going to be going on those like vertical sights quite a bit. And you need that like long range kind of ability to open stuff up. You can put Hibana on the window repels to open up Kanto wall. So on bank, right, she gets played quite a bit. Is she going to get played a lot on Oregon? Well, maybe kind of, right? She can do like a pincer hit from attic while Ace goes master. But is she going to get a lot of pick on, you know, Chalet? Probably not. All right, Thermite. If you have a wall that's outside and you're not going to get C4'd, pretty cool, right? You can open that shit up. And it's a big hole. And it's the biggest of all the holes, of all the hard breachy holes. And it's, you know, you can cover a lot of ground very quickly, and it's super, super useful. And then when you go inside, you're going to get blown up from below because the floor is probably made of wood. And so that changes a lot, right? That changes so much of the dynamic. That's pretty much it, right? That, you know, I could blah, blah, blah about like, oh, well, you know, for this side, he's really good. For this side, he's, you know, just, you know, rule of thumb, if the wall's outside, bring a Thermite because you're not at risk. If the wall's inside, probably want to bring an Ace. Cool. I skipped ahead of the release order. What did I do? 25. What? Capitao.
And I was like, constant at all. Hold on. I was talking to someone about this, and I said, "No, what the fuck are you doing, you high motherfucker? What?"
Capitao, the man himself. Okay, Capitao is a very versatile character who can do a lot of different things. He has can openers. His gun's okay. But he is a very self-sufficient character while also contributing a significant amount of things to his team that they can benefit from. He has, you know, obviously he has the can opener, which is really strong. He has the Gon 6, which you can use to dispatch something like a bulletproof camera every once in a while. He has smokes, and he has area denial. He can use it from the ceiling to clear people out of corner positions and stuff like that. Capitao really doesn't have any glaring weaknesses aside from, you know, his weapons. And so as a result of that, there are a lot of situations where Capitao is, you know, pretty useful, I would say. Compared to other characters, right? I think that he brings a lot more direct sort of, you know, flexibility, right? You can plug him into a number of different situations, and it's not a bad thing, right? He can help gain map control with the fire. He can help prevent map control with the fire. He can help with the site execute with the smokes, and he can cover the post plant with the smokes. He does a lot of different things, and he's good at all of them, aside from the gunfighting, which, you know, you can kind of make up for because he has scopes, and he's a 3-speed. So, you know, the low rate of fire weapon isn't going to hurt him quite as much. Buck, solid B tier character. Buck is really good when you need verticality from a distance that you can do safely. I prefer playing him over Sledge just because I feel a little bit more comfortable peeking off of the holes that I make. Sledge is very vulnerable to C4 because, you know, when he sledges, he's very likely to be close to where he sledges. Whereas with Buck, it's a little bit more, you know, you can like Buck, you know, from further away. The thing that, you know, the only real main thing that hurts Buck is that he doesn't have frag grenades. But I do think that I think that the whole like Buck losing his frag grenades thing has been a little bit overblown. I know that some people still bring it up, like that didn't happen like freaking like almost 4 years ago. But that's Siege player moment. Siege players like to talk about changes that happened 4 years ago that made them stop playing the game. Buck, I think I think he makes up for it now with the utility that he does have, right? Like having the can opener, having the Gone 6, I think, makes him into a very versatile skeleton army kind of character. The only thing that, he doesn't really have is, just really like dedicated destruction. And, he interfaces with the game in a really fun and interesting way with the destruction element, especially from a distance. He can go from below and then shoot people for, work stuff from that kind of angle. He can do it from, above and below and through. Like he's just a very versatile, well-rounded character. But everything over here is going to help a little bit more, depending if they get better dice rolls. So, and now we got Sledge, who is just a little bit better, in my opinion, just because he has those frag grenades, and also to a certain extent because he has the L85. I think there's an argument to be made that the C8, could be a little bit better of a weapon because it has, higher rate of fire, but the L85 can engage from just about any range and melt, even with body shots. And it's really easy to hit headshots with. So, I think there's an argument to be made there. Sledge can cover, a very significant amount of vertical ground. And I think he's, overall just a little bit more reliable than Buck, just because, the frag grenade thing, we talked about Buck, how he was able to go from below. Well, you can kind of do that with frag grenades. Buck doesn't really have the ability to destroy util from below in the same way that Sledge does. The whole the depth charging thing, it's only available to a very select few. In Rainbow Six Siege, frag grenades, I think only like 4 people have them now. There's a reason for that. Yeah, so Sledge is just a very versatile character who can attack from pretty much any kind of position possible, and he can cut off crosses for people below. And he's the verticality guy. He's the go-to verticality guy for a reason, and he's going to stay that way for a pretty long time. Thatcher, we have secondary EMPs, but the one thing that Thatcher can guarantee a counter to is Cade. Can't do that with secondary EMPs, right? At least not as efficiently. If you can drone out the location of the Cade sticks and for certain, then the EMPs can work. If you can't, which does happen, especially with the observation blockers nowadays, or if they have a mute, then, if they don't ban Thatcher, you can probably bring a Thatcher and then get away with it. I do think that he does get banned quite a bit in ranks just because some of the old habits from the utility simulator will, die hard. But for the most part, I think you can get away with not banning Thatcher. I think it makes the game a little bit more interesting and opens up a little bit more opportunities for you from a strategic point of view. But obviously, a lot of people do understandably feel that, the guy just pretty much blows up the entire game, right? Because he can just, the game is, centers around utility. Right, for wall denial, or at least, people feel that it used to back in the day, and now it doesn't anymore. Now it's Call of Duty. Right, can we ever win? I don't know, with Siege players. But Thatcher is a very, very good operator. Throw a thing, kaboom. Okay, you can't get much more straightforward than that. Up next, we got Ashe. For the same reasons that Zof is not up here, right? Iana and Sledge just kind of take these roles away from Ashe. Ashe has the R4C, which I think is, I used to give the R4C a lot of crap ever since it got its recoil buff not too recently. I've been using it a lot more to great effect. I think that her gadget is slightly underrated, and the fact that it has multi-use purpose, right? You can charge it from below to soft destroy stuff like bandit batteries, for the wall in the same way that Zof can. But I think that the combination of her 3-speed rating kind of lends herself to get a little bit more, put herself in positions where she can kind of capitalize on the destruction advantage of her charge. The fact that it's timed, unlike the Zof charge, kind of allows you to do, the coveted Ashe rush a little bit more efficiently, right? Where the charge buries itself, and then you start the sprint, and then it'll blow, and then you'll be sprinting as the time, as it blows up. Whereas with Zof, it's like ka-chunk, and then you kind of expose yourself. So it's a little bit more useful. The Zof thing for like clearing foot level holes, that's a really good example of when to bring a Zof or an Ashe charge. Just fun entry fragger to play. doesn't really, you know, lose anything by bringing her, but you might want to bring something else, you know, a significant portion of the time. That's why she's not up here. Twitch is an interesting choice. Twitch can counter Capcan. Twitch can counter mute jammers, provided the circumstances are correct, right? If it's in a position where the drone can like kind of like zappy zap it. Twitch can deal with default cameras from far away. Brava has to get up closer to it. So you might look at this and go like, okay, well, you know, these two characters kind of do different things. Should they go in the same tier? I would say so, because Brava is more useful for a very electronic utility dependent sort of setup. Twitch is more useful if you want to get rid of, you know, you have to get rid of the bandit battery. You got to get rid of the Capcan charge, right? Stuff like that. If destruction is what you need more than, you know, trying to, you know, cop it for yourself, then Twitch is your gal. She also has the 417, which is the best DMR in the game. And that's significant in and of itself. Twitch can pop Miras as well. Brava cannot do that. Okay, so Twitch has her purpose. Brava has her purpose. I think, you know, they both kind of do similar things in sort of different ways, especially when you're talking about wall denial. Brava is not as good for that. So if you really, really need that, you're probably going to bring Twitch. Okay. Look, I don't dislike Blitz. Okay. You know what Blitz does? All right. Small corridor. Oregon, elbow. Good example. Blue, elbow. By like bunker, bring a Blitz. Chalet, trench. Wine rush, bring a Blitz. Have a plan. Have teammates to back you up. Play your refrags. Blitz has a job that he can do, provided a bunch of other things go well, and you set up the circumstances for which, you know, he can do his job. He can do it. Do I recommend that you try to do it most of the time? Probably not. It's one of those things where it's like, as soon as you pull out that card, then you're kind of like, okay, well, now I can't really do this anymore. So, you know, he runs at you. He's got a shield. It goes, flashes you. We'll see what happens in the rework. I don't know. IQ. God, I wish I could rate her higher. God, I wish I could. I love playing IQ in ranked. I'll even bring her in the 10-man groups every once in a while, you know, because she's a really good Solus counter, and I like her gun. But when I'm really trying to break down, like, you know, competitive characters, right? Like, IQ's just not in the mix right now, because let's look at her competition, right? You have Destruction, you have Flank Watch, you have Crowd Control, you have the timings, you have Flores, right? Flores is Flores, right? Like, let's just compare to her competition. She doesn't have Destruction. She is really only good for countering, you know, like a Pulse or a Solus. And, you know, it's like she can set up plays for you. Sure. Yeah. In tandem with other characters. That's super, super useful, especially with the Brava. But, you know, in terms of self-sufficiency, she's just not like super, super there. And she doesn't bring a million, you know, really useful things to the team. I think that there are a couple of things that they could, you know, try to help IQ out with in terms of her having a more direct sort of like utility destruction role. But that's a video for another time. You know, just, you know, have fun with the guns if you really want to. I like playing IQ on occasion. I just, you know, I'm not getting paid to play professional Siege, thank God, because I would not do very well in that environment. But, you know, for what I do, IQ's, you know, fun to play, and that's enough for me. But I understand that she's not a super, super, you know, competitively viable character. Fuze. You know, this one might also irritate some people. I like Fuze as well. Fuze is great when you have the verticality situation where you can pull it off. The issue is that it's very slow. It takes a lot of map control for you to do it efficiently, and you're very vulnerable to flanks in a way that other characters are not. So, you know, everything that he does, you know, is kind of like slow and deliberate and a little bit drawn out. Once it gets going, he's a lot of fun. But a lot of things have to happen, right? You have to get into a position where you can do the verticality through the floor. You have to have that, you know, flank watch cutoff. You have to have a drone. You got to do this. You got to do that. Like, there's so many, like, there's so many boxes that you have to tick in order for Fuze to get value. Whereas, you know, with a lot of these other characters, that's not really the case. Also, you know, the counter to Fuze is moving, right? So that's kind of tough. He's really, really good for, you know, some particular sites where you can take advantage of the fact that, you know, like the entire floor above is made of wooden floorboards. And then, you know, there are a lot of sites where it's like, why would you do that? You should probably just, you know, bring a buck. You should probably bring a Sledge. If you really need that kind of like destruction, then, you know, there are other characters that can do that with their gun and a hole that you made in the ceiling. Right? You see what I mean? So if you're in a position where you can, you know, get something out of Fuze in terms of like destroying utility and cutting off crosses, go for it. But I say, you know, he requires a significant amount of map knowledge to use efficiently. And that's why he doesn't really, you know, take much of a role from these guys up here. And Glaz, I'm going to place a B tier just because of the effectiveness of the smoke plant, especially when you combo it up with a bunch of different characters. You can throw a Grim in there. You can throw in a Gridlock, maybe even a Sens, depending on how you approach it. You know, Glaz is really, really good at holding crosses from a distance, you know, and that's why Callie also kind of takes a back seat. The DMR that he has melts with body shots, and, you know, he can see through smoke, which is really cool. It's got a Gon 6, depending on what you want. You know, you can also bring a ton of different utility options. There are lots of different roles that Glaz can fill, and you can kind of plug him into a number of different strategies pretty effectively. But he doesn't have, like, you know, a super, super crazy amount of intel, and he is very limited to his, you know, the gunfighting ranges that he has with the sniper rifle and the scope. So just because of that, you know, you can't really drop him into every single composition, but there are a lot of compositions where you can, you know, okay, we can fit a Glaz here, especially on, you know, wide open maps like Chalet. So yeah, thanks for watching my Dread Factor tier list. Like I said, I'd be more than happy to do videos like this for each of the patches as they come out, you know, the big picture, like 3-month content updates, you know, the operations. And if you like what I had to say, let me know what you agree or disagree with in the comments down below. Promise not to get too angry. Okay. So yeah, thanks again. And I'll see you guys in the next one. These videos do really well. They help me out a lot. So thank you for watching. Deuces.